Welcome. So glad you tuned in to Leap of Faith as we explore Altos. Taken from the Latin altus, meaning high, we feature top priority news stories. We join our editorial and digital teams at Camzel with trending stories from our local weekly Catholic newspaper, as well as Caribbean, Vatican, and global stories. Take the leap with us, hot off the press.
Good evening, and welcome to Altos, a weekly Catholic news program produced in collaboration with Trinity TV. We thank Roger for holding the fort last week, and we look forward to another exciting episode this week. Here's a look at our top stories. Students at Catholic schools answer the Church's call to pray for peace in the Middle East. Archbishop Gordon speaks to the importance of deep listening as the Synod focuses on the attention of the voice of the Holy Spirit. And the Catholic community gets set to celebrate World Mission Sunday this weekend, and Pope Francis shares his own vision of a church burning with love for Christ. And later, we speak with the president of the Society for St. Vincent de Paul, Mr. Nigel Phillip, on their role in dealing with the poor and the homeless, particularly on the streets of Port of Spain. Let's take a look now at our top story. Amid the violent conflict and loss of life in Israel and Gaza, students at some Catholic primary and secondary schools here at home joined millions around the world who heeded Pope Francis's call for a day of prayer and fasting last Tuesday. Catholic News senior reporter Lara Pickford-Gordon tells us more.
Our hearts reach out to the victims of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. May your heavenly mercy and grace embrace this troubled region, putting an end to the violence and suffering.
On October 11th, Cardinal Pierbattista Pizzaballa, Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem and head of the Assembly of Catholic Ordinaries of the Holy Land, asked for a day of prayer, fasting, and abstinence. Catholics were advised to include Eucharistic adoration and recitation of the Rosary to deliver to God the Father our thirst for peace, justice, and reconciliation. The Synod prayer was used by schools.
We stand before you, Holy Spirit, as we gather together in your name. With love alone to guide us, make yourself at home in our hearts.
I am Lara Pickford-Gordon for Catholic News, Altos.
Here at Altos, we ask that the prayers for an end to the bloodshed and a return to peace continues. The 16th Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops is entering its final days at the Vatican in Rome. Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, president of the Antilles Episcopal Conference of Bishops, shared with Altos some of the main points of the discussions and a significant moment for him on day 10 of the event.
Have you ever heard practice makes perfect? Well, that's what we're doing. We're practicing. So we're in the midst of B2, which is co-responsibility for mission. And we're practicing again and again this conversation in the Spirit. It's not as easy as it sounds, and it really takes deep listening, because it's in the depth of the listening that we really allow the Spirit to come forward. So we are in this listening process. It's training us to really listen with our ears and with the ear of our heart. I would invite you to practice this listening, because we're going to be doing it a lot in our church. It's the only way that we're going to move beyond the fractured societies that we're living in. My highlight today, oh yes, well, I met the Holy Father, and we had a wonderful little exchange, and that was so precious and so wonderful. You continue praying for us as we continue doing the work that has been set out to us by the Church, by the Holy Father, by the Holy Spirit. God bless.
What a wonderful moment that must have been. You can visit our Archdiocesan and Catholic News website and social media for updates on the Synod from His Grace as it begins to wrap up. Hearts on fire, feet on the move. That is the theme of Pope Francis's message for World Mission Sunday, October the 22nd. Inspired by the story of the disciples on the road to Emmaus who met the resurrected Christ, the Pope envisions missionaries with a renewed zeal for evangelization and hearts on fire with love for Christ. According to Pope Francis, the human family today is wounded by injustice, divisions, and war, and so more than ever in need of the good news of peace and salvation in Christ. All can contribute to the missionary movement with prayers, activities, material offerings, and personal witness. And you can read Pope Francis's entire message in this week's issue of the Catholic News. And we remind you that the collection taken up at all Masses this weekend is sent to the Pontifical Society for the Propagation of Faith, which fosters missionary cooperation throughout the world, including here in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm sure a lot of us go to the market. And when you think of going to the market, you think vegetables and stalls, meats and seasonings. Well, there was a market with a difference at Holy Faith Convent, Couva last Saturday, as the Holy Faith Sisters hosted their annual market space. Catholic News contributor Elmo Griffith was there, and he sent us some of the activities. He also spoke briefly with school principal Sister Teresa Vialva. Here's a look.
Furthermore, every 6 years, the Holy Faith Sisters re-examine their lives and set up priorities for alignment with the founding vision. Our 3 priorities at this time include faith development, care for the earth, and support for people who are struggling. This year, our Market Space event will honor these priorities by collaborating with individuals and enterprises to 1, encourage faith-filled responses to promote holistic and sustainable national development. We will distribute to participating entities a list of the 10 qualities Margaret Abel embodied as she worked to improve her nation. We can grow by emulating these qualities in similar circumstances.
Couva Parish Priest Father Trevor Nathasingh celebrated Holy Mass during the day. Some of the initiatives promoted were tree planting, agribusiness, and support for the Venezuelan migrant community. Marian devotions for 2023 at St. Benedict's RC Church, La Romaine came to an end on Friday, October 13th.
From ever since, we've been having it, and we've been having the children who made first communion, and in October, the month of October, the big celebration of, the session outside, throwing flowers for Blessed Mother, and we have these children also praying the rosary as well, because Our Lady wants the children. That's what she wants, the next generation, and it is such a beautiful feeling, to know that this has been going on all through these years. And people have, said that Father Lianos used to come, bishops used to come and pray and say the Holy Mass.
And in some regional news, Pope Francis has accepted the resignation of Bishop Burchell McPherson, Bishop of Montego Bay, Jamaica, due to his ill health. A release from the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Kingston's Chancery Office said the Dicastery for the Evangelization of Peoples, with the Pope's authority, had appointed Bishop John Passard of Mandeville as the apostolic administrator for the Montego Bay Diocese until further provision was made. Archbishop Kenneth Richards of Kingston, who signed the statement, expressed gratitude for Bishop McPherson's dedicated service during his 10-year tenure as Bishop of Montego Bay and extended best wishes for his retirement. The Archbishop also thanked Bishop Passard for having accepted this important pastoral responsibility and assured him of his own support. And we wish Bishop McPherson all the best. If you've been watching this program, you know that we've been encouraging you to buy copies of the Catholic News to share with others. Members of the team at Catholic Media Services, CAMCEL, have been visiting those stalwarts of our parishes who every week sell the Catholic News. Recently, the team visited the Southern Vicariate and got the opportunity to speak to 45 sellers who provided them with feedback on the paper. The CAMCEL team also took advantage of the occasion to personally thank them for their contribution in helping to spread the good news through their sales. Here's a look at what happened at the meeting in the La Romaine Parish Hall.
So we're going to stand up literally now, and I want you to meet somebody.
CAMSER thanks all the dedicated sellers of the paper. Remember, we can't spread the good news without your support. And now it's time for us to take a short break. And when we return from the break, we speak via Zoom with Nigel Phillip, President of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, on plans to remove the homeless off the streets. As we head to our break, though, take a look at this week's trivia question and see if you know the answer. Thanks very much for staying us and welcome back. The Society for St. Vincent de Paul is one of the country's oldest charitable institutions and has been involved in caring for the poor and the destitute for many, many decades. The charity operates 10 homes for the aged, 2 hostels, 2 halfway houses, 3 shelters and a center for displaced persons. We have with us today on the Altos program Mr. Nigel Phillip, the current president of the Society for St. Vincent de Paul. Welcome, Nigel.
Hi, good day. Welcome. Great being here.
Thanks very much for joining us. I know you're in sunny Tobago at this time, but thanks for taking time to join us this morning.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah. Nigel, how long have you been president of the Society for St. Vincent de Paul?
I assume president of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul from October 2nd in 2022. So it's making it a year and a couple of days since I've been in the position.
Okay, so that's pretty good. And you're carrying on a long tradition of work,
yeah.
You know, really, really important work.
Definitely, yes.
But Nigel, given everything that has been happening, how is the organization meeting the needs of the socially displaced, of the destitute, of the homeless now? How are you surviving?
Well, we are, how can I put it? We are trying to survive because it is our mandate, and it has always been our mandate since the inception of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. We have been a 165, 166-year-old organization throughout the world. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we have been assisting persons who are in vulnerable positions, like persons who live on the street, persons who needs food, and those aspects of life we try to aid in. The society in Trinidad and Tobago is made up of 65 conferences. Those 65 conferences are placed throughout various parishes throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And in those parishes, there are conferences who would pick up or generate funds through donations or fundraisers to get money or any sorts of things that they can help persons within those parishes with food supplies, maybe rental supplies, medical supplies, anything that persons would need that who are vulnerable, we would provide whatever little assistance that we can give to them.
So the funding generally comes from the support from the parishes, yes?
Yes, so the funding mainly comes from support from the parish persons who are attending Mass every Sunday. We normally have a special collection at the end of every month for the work of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and that is carried throughout the various parishes in Trinidad and Tobago. We also get contributions from some companies, corporates. We get from persons from off the street, persons who are willing to give. And this is how we are given the tools or the finances to do the kind of work that we are doing here.
And let's zoom in on that work, Nigel. How complex is the issue of homelessness in particular in the country? It
is indeed a very complex situation because when we talk about the homeless, persons think that persons being on the street, people being on the street in the sense of may have mental issues, persons may have maybe being displaced through financial crisis, but the homeless situation goes in a way back. I want to say way back in the sense is that there are many situations for homelessness. So we have the mental issues. We have persons who are displaced, persons who have loss of employment. We also looking at persons who also are using homelessness as a form of employment as well. We have persons who are deportees. So when you look at that, you look at a whole array of different classes of persons being homeless. Now, how you ascertain in terms of how you deal with it, because at the end of the day, when somebody is homeless, they are homeless because of a reason that they're on the street. And then that reason is a way of how they can survive being on the street. So sometimes persons have families, sometimes persons come with different reasons in terms of why they are on the streets in Trinidad and Tobago.
And in terms of the society's work then, how do you go about, because it's one thing to provide a meal for the persons who are on the streets. How do you go about ensuring or trying to ensure that persons who can are taken off the streets?
Well, to say one person, okay, so let me go back. I don't know if we are aware that we once run the Center for Socially Displaced Persons that was in downtown Port of Spain. And when we were running that particular shelter, even though there were homeless persons on the street, you find a big body of homeless persons were lodged at that center. So we had a capacity of about 120, 130 persons seeking accommodation spaces to sleep or those things like that at the shelter, getting a bath, coming to get a meal and those kind of stuff. But what happened is that we no longer have that the socially displaced center that we have there. Now, what happens now? You find that when you look on the streets, you see there's a rise in homeless persons on the streets. Now, how do we interject? Now, we may have other buildings that we can use as shelters, but then we have other purposes for those buildings that we use. So we have buildings for the aging, we have persons who are from halfway house shelters and those things like that. But at the end of the day, in order for us to do our work efficiently, you must have the assistance from the government. You must have some sort of assistance from corporate, persons who are given and those things. And in order to do that, we all need to work collaboratively in terms of have the work done effectively. Because remember, when persons are socially displaced, you have to bring in other sectors, and I would have spoken about the aspect of persons with mental issues. Persons need to seek mental issues and maybe at the psychiatric hospital. You have persons with certain illnesses. How do you treat with that? So it's all about teamwork, but what is very hard about this job is getting persons to volunteer. Because, persons will come and volunteer, but persons prefer sometimes to volunteer not just in cash or kind. They might just say, okay, I would support you by having to try to raise funds on those kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it is very challenging to do the kind of work that we're doing without the kind of support. And the number one support in anything like this is the finances. And secondly, money to drive the kind of work that we do.
Recently, the government turned the sod for a new building in downtown Port of Spain. It's a social an assessment center, a place for to do what you seem to have been doing at the displacement center. How does that impact the work of St. Vincent de Paul? Are you in collaboration with the Ministry of Social Development on this? Is there any kind of work together with the ministry insofar as that is concerned?
Let me put this out first of all. Now, the work that the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is doing, this is a work that we will never stop doing, because this is part of us, this is who we are, and this is what we are mandated to do. Now, we welcome anyone or anybody who wants to do the same type of work that we're doing. But, and I'm not here to bash the government or anything like that. That is not, I'm not going to do that. But the government, they have their plans. We welcome their plans. We will support whatever way we can support. But even though they have a plan to have a new building, now, anything with government or anything with plans that with the government is long term. So we're going to have a building 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road. That is long term. Now, what is the short term is happening right now? How can we fill the void right now? Because if you look around on the streets, you see there are homeless persons sleeping all over the street. The streets are sometimes dirty because they defecate on the streets and all this kind of stuff. And as a way of survival by having to move from point A to point B, and these things are unsanitary. So again, we would provide the support, regardless if we have the funding or not. We will try whatever way we can do to help by giving, providing a meal or providing maybe some sort of temporary shelter or something to that in its effect to help the homeless situation in Trinidad.
So even as that center, and you're quite right, that's a long-term program. But
yes, it is.
In the meantime, you still have your work to do, and you will continue to do
we will
do
continue
that work.
to do our work. Yes, definitely. Yes.
Are there any aspects, the government has just presented the national budget. There were some issues with respect that were presented with respect to dealing with social displacement. There were issues with dealing with the social safety network. Any comments on that? Do you see anywhere in which the society might be able to benefit from?
Well, like in any work, okay, so the safety, when I looked at that aspect in terms of the budget, they talk about safe spaces, and the safe spaces will include or transitional facilities, and that will include things like providing assistance for the poor or the vulnerable or persons who are displaced on the streets in whatever way. And again, what should be happening, and I think in the budget is like working with the various organizations on the ground, and how can we get those various organizations on the ground? And I'm not just talking about St. Vincent de Paul. It could be any of the organizations on the ground who's doing the work, and each organization has a different mandate in terms of what they provide assistance in. Now, what is detailed is to have that sort of focal point of persons working together and who could provide whatever services. But however, the government should be able to provide some form of subvention to these organizations to help with the work that they're doing, or even provide training or to adopt a model that may be working in some other country that could bring and provide the training to enhance people's skills in terms of what they do in providing that assistance to persons on the streets.
Nigel, there's one aspect that has caused tremendous concern for people, and that is the legislative part of it, because there's no legislation at the moment that permits you or anybody else to take up somebody from off the streets and have them housed somewhere else. Are you in collaboration? Is there any consultation taking place? Are the views of St. Vincent de Paul being taken on board with respect to any proposed legislation?
Well, presently, right now, we are not engaged in any discussions. We indicated that we are open to discussions for any government agency who wants to have those discussions with us, and we are open to that. I know during the period of the COVID, with the whole issue with the CSDP project, one of the things was the accountability of the fundings and those things like that. And that is understood in the sense is that you want accountability, and accountability must happen. But the challenges of the society, and I would have said before, earlier on, is having persons volunteer. And even though when persons volunteer, you may have to pay some sort of money. And when COVID happened, everything just went all over the place. So in the sense of having to produce timely reports or any sort of document, it would have been tardy in coming. But we did eventually produce those documents for the accountability in terms of how funds are being run. On the other hand, even though funds are being given for various projects, which we will also welcome, but sometimes in terms of providing those funds or to assist with those projects, sometimes government will pay funding not at the time that they're supposed to pay. So if you have to pay staff every month for a salary, you may not get your government funding or subvention maybe 3 or 4 months down the road. Yeah. So it's like, how do we do that to provide? So we pull on the support from different conferences within the organization to provide the work or to do the kind of work that we're doing. So there are some weaker conferences, there are some stronger conferences that may have the financial backing. But again, and in terms of answering your question, is that we are open to any discussion that there is in terms of having to provide the support or to enhance the strength in terms of working together for the aid of assisting those persons in those vulnerable crises.
And Nigel, that's a good place for us to wrap it up for now. We want to thank you for joining with us, and certainly continue to make the appeal to all and sundry, all who are listening to us, to volunteer their services, time, talent and treasure to the Society for St. Vincent de Paul. Have a good afternoon. Have a good day.
Yes, thanks. Yes.
Altos, from the Latin altus, meaning high. Every Friday night, we feature the top news items hot off the press. We are taking a leap of faith on Trinity TV. Jump in with us for this new and exciting experience.
And we thank Nigel for that interview. Take a look now at our upcoming events with Simone de Lochan from Camsel. And in our Catholic news this week, here's a look at some of the stories being featured.
In this week's issue of the Catholic News, read Debbie Arnaud's breast cancer survival story from our online women's blog at Catholic News TT. And join the pilgrimage to Turkey as the group remembers their visit to the tomb of St. John, Mary's house at Ephesus, and the 7 ancient churches mentioned in the book of Revelations. This and more. I am Simone de Lochan, Associate Editor of the Catholic News.
And remember to pick up a copy of the Catholic News and share it with a neighbor, a friend, or someone you know who hasn't been to church for a while. As we close, remember you can catch the repeat of this program at 3 p.m. on Sunday, right here on Trinity TV. For those who wish to have their stories highlighted here, send them to us at altos@catholictt.org. That's altos@CATHOLIC.TT.org. You can also send us your feedback on what you'd like to see covered in future programs. As we close, we leave you with some of the sights and sounds of the Holy Faith Convent Couva Market Space. Have a good evening, everyone.